I want to say that out of principle, this topic and kind of content is not my normal sort of thing. I don't like speculation or fan theory videos, especially when this thing that's being speculated about is going to be revealed in due time anyway. If I make a video talking about what I'd love for Resident Evil 9, and then Resident Evil 9 comes out, that video's then obsolete. But I don't think this is that. See, I'm working on a bit of a prevailing theory that will hopefully future-proof this video a bit to see if I was right. Resi 9 is going to be a while off. We've only just started to get sneak peeks for the RE4 remake, and there was a 4-year gap between entries 7 and 8. However, based on certain patterns emerging and taking some educated guesses, I believe it's somewhat possible to speculate fairly plausibly about what this third entry to the franchise might look like. To understand the past is to control the future, and so to get a good idea of where Resident Evil is going, we need to look where it's been.
And why aren't you in uniform?
Let's begin. Even though I got popular for my close association with Resident Evil Village, I actually prefer Biohazard, but that's a personal preference. Resident Evil has a very specific sort of nostalgia for me. It makes me think of hot summer nights. The window is partially open, there's a slight buzzing of insects outside, you've opened a beer and you're playing the game in the dark with only the light from your television lighting up the room. The game is intense, it's got you sweating, but the windows are already open and there is no fresh air to be had. And you just sit there late into the night, breathing in the same stale, warm air. That, for me, is what Resident Evil is. That sort of ordinary suburban atmosphere. RE7 nailed that, and in a rare compliment I'll give to the film, I'll at least say Welcome to Raccoon City was clearly on the same wavelength. And all of this is achieved because Resident Evil Biohazard is obviously done as a huge homage to the redneck hillbilly inbred genre of horror slasher movies. It's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Hills Have Eyes. Out of all topics that horror movies tackle, aliens, ghosts, monsters, this genre easily has the most potential to be terrifying, and that's because, well, it's real. There's absolutely nothing unrealistic about or stopping those events from happening in real life. Xenomorphs, zombies, ghost sharks, yes, scary, but that couldn't actually happen. And what RE7 does is bring all of that disgusting, dirty, gory imagery into the franchise, while adapting it to fit the universe by introducing a BOW plot. A nice tribute to a very interesting psychological and underappreciated genre of horror. Yeah, good. And then you get onto RE Village and instantly we swap out the sweltering heat of the Florida swamps for the frozen Alps of Romania. Now we're taking a dive into a different genre, that of Victorian horror. This is where horror cinema began, and all entries into the genre today owe their origin to it. Lady Dimitrescu and her daughters are an obvious homage to Dracula. Lon Chaney Jr.'s Wolfman is the inspiration behind the Lycans, and Moreau, his whole area is obviously meant to provoke imagery of the creature from the Black Lagoon, and Donna is the Phantom of House Benevento. I'd even say the ambitious yet mad scientist Victor Frankenstein has found himself rebranded into Karl Heisenberg with an equally temperamental son to match. The inspiration and at times nearly completely black and white visuals are obvious. We are looking at Capcom incorporating another genre of horror into Resident Evil and doing the necessary things plot-wise to make that actually work. Obviously the Lycans aren't real werewolves, they're just moldy guys, even though werewolves do canonically exist in the Resident Evil universe. Between Biohazard and Village, there's clearly a pattern emerging here. And is it laziness? Absolutely not. Because in borrowing so much from these genres, it's introducing new audiences to them. I could put on The Hills Have Eyes and tell my flatmate that it's like Resident Evil 7. They are fantastic tributes. But now to take us back to the point of the video, this is important because now we have established a pattern. The first two in this presumed trilogy are tributes to different genres of horror, but also very unlike any of the games we've had from the series before. That sounds generic, but it actually does an incredible job at telling us what to expect in the future. What genre hasn't Resident Evil tackled? As far as what comes to head immediately, noir mystery, spirituality and the paranormal, cosmic horror, and 80s slasher. Now, all of those sound pretty daft, but I know what you're thinking. Those don't sound very Resident Evil, do they? But did RE8? It fitted once he was done, but when those first trailers dropped and we saw Lady Dimitrescu's massive vampires and werewolves, there wasn't a single person that wasn't confused and maybe a bit nervous. And what does being true Resident Evil mean anyway? Because the way I see it, when Capcom was developing that first game, their pitch wasn't, so there's going to be an international super pharmacy that's actually developing bioweapons in pursuit for eternal life for their founder, Oswald Spencer. And then this comes to head on the 24th of July 1998, where simultaneously hidden labs below Raccoon City and the Spencer Mansion, or no, they went, right, what is some scary stuff that we can put in a haunted house? Giant spiders. Yep. Giant snake. Yep. Zombies. Not really a haunted house thing, but... Great white sharks. You're not taking this seriously, are you? Lizard people! They just threw as many different horror things into the setting that they could, and then worked backwards to figure out a plot to explain why they're all there. I think a noir or crime mystery game could work. Think about it, bioweapons being illegally sold on the black market is literally what this game series is about. We've only ever just focused on the events of when stuff goes wrong, but I could honestly see an adult Rose being sent in by Chris Redfield, Hunnigan style, to infiltrate a black market operation going on in New Raccoon City. That's basically almost the plot of RE4, just swap out Ashley for some important stolen merchandise, the villagers for controlled BOWs, and you've got RE9 on your hands. But if a Mafia-inspired RE game is too difficult for you to swallow, I know you're gonna struggle to deal with introducing aliens to the franchise. But we don't know how much time has passed between when we last saw Rose and when RE9 will take place, but it's a pretty good guess it's gonna have to be sometime in the future, which means if Capcom is gonna have her as the main character of the next game, the setting would have to be 2038 minimum. It's not a huge time jump, but when you look at how our technology evolved in that time, I think a time jump would be a good enough reason to implement a more futuristic spin on the game. Something along the lines of Alien or Blade Runner. You know, it's futuristic, but it's a realistic, unfanciful future where advanced technology is mundane, everything's dirty, and everyone's just a bit depressed. Like the London Underground. And this isn't to say it'd be based around space travel or artificial intelligence. Frankly, I'd hate if Resident Evil did something like that. Dino Crisis, but give me a slow, atmospheric, Alien Isolation style game playing out in a realistic future city wouldn't be cool as hell. Maybe an Umbrella space station has a containment leak, and Rose, being a mutant, can survive easier in the low atmosphere, so she's sent in to deal with it, only to find the place filled with things resembling aliens. Look, it's daft and silly, and this is just speculation, but is it more ridiculous than haunted dolls and vampire titties? A bit more down to earth now, but not really. You have the idea of something paranormal going on. Themes of spirituality, possession, demons, and the like. RE has flirted with the idea of linking their exaggerated science into religion, but I'd like to see this done as the central focus of a plot. This could be linked into any predominant religion in the West, but I think Christianity has been done to death at this point. Indigenous mythology has a whole bunch of concepts that lend themselves well to the franchise, and similar to Villagers' repurposed classic monsters, I'd love to see BOW equivalents of the Wendigos, Skinwalkers, or even Mothman. Kind of like how X-Files bridged the gap between UFO sightings and Native American spirituality. I believe there's a valid connection there to be had. Oh, and side note that I've just decided to chuck into the script while I'm writing it, I've finally been able to run ads on my videos, which is like so cool. I get like a pence for every view, but it's a pence I didn't have earlier. And I always watch the ads, what are you talking about? I've never pressed the skip button in my life. You know, I don't even watch the videos. I love watching ads because I am a Sigma male. First thing I do when I wake up in the morning is take a shit, then I eat, then I get out of bed, and then I watch ads all day long, nothing else. I haven't fed my cat in 4 days. I don't have money to because you f***ers aren't watching the ads, unlike me. And so, in talking about all this speculation for RE4, we should also think about the other side of the franchise. I'm sure the question has occurred to a few of you as well. When are they gonna stop doing the remakes? Are RE5 and 6 gonna get remade? The first 4 make sense, they're all universally hailed and loved, but as soon as you start getting into some of the less good games, I see it as 2 options. Either RE4 will be the last, they've remade all of the hits, you don't actually need to keep going after that. Or, because Capcom like money, they'll remake 5 and 6, but this time I can see them using the word remake loosely. I'm talking a full reimagining, a big change of the plot and setting, making it fit in more with the tone of the franchise. Maybe taking some of the best bits, but honouring the originals as now very weak priorities. And I also gotta say, I think quite confidently that we'll be getting a remake at some point. I don't think it needs one. I think if it's too difficult for modern players to adapt to controls, then they need to grow a pair, but it doesn't really match the playability of the other games. I get that, and I think we're gonna get one eventually. But in a perfect world, it'd be Code Veronica getting that treatment. Seriously guys, Code Veronica is the best of the original releases. It is a far better continuation of the plot points established in the trilogy than RE4 was. Yep, I said it. Call me a woke moralist, but I prefer Code Veronica over RE4. Fight me. And since we're just doing fanwank stuff now, can you please stop with RE Resistance and RE Verse? Like, I get it, you're trying to replicate the success of Outbreak, but just remake Outbreak, please. Personally, I have faith in whatever future action the mainline games take. My main concern is what comes in with the other aspects of the franchise. You know, Resident Evil used to have so much going for it. It seemed like it was a free-for-all back then. And personally, I absolutely love all the old tie-in content the earliest games had. The bright and family-friendly colours are just so appealing and completely opposite to what the franchise is really about. It screams 90s. I love it. You had spin-off games, novels, comics. These days, we've only been getting the mainline entry games and the remakes. And whatever the hell these were. I want to see more stuff like what we used to get. Sure, I'd read a prequel book about the Lords of the Houses. Obviously, I'd read an odd-going comic book about the BSAA and Blue Umbrella. I find modern franchises seem to treat expanded media as a dirty word. About the only thing that properly embraces it these days is Star Wars. And when Star Wars is giving more respect to its property than you, bit off topic there, but now, bearing all that in mind, if the sky is the limit for RE9, what would your sequel involve? Do you want Rose to continue her father's legacy, or do we think Ethan will come back? His consciousness is in the mold, so I don't see why he couldn't. Or are we maybe hoping for the return of more legacy characters? Jill Valentine hasn't been in a game since RE5, and she'd seen better days. Let me know in the comments. I genuinely want to hear other people's opinions on this. And if you've enjoyed this strange delve into niche media, please do consider subscribing, dropping a like, the usual YouTuber nonsense. If you want to see more of me, I'm active on Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to see me making a fool out of myself for the validation of strangers, my TikTok is also a thing. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and even if you haven't, I hope you have found it just the least bit interesting. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Boom.